Welcome to Extra Takes, hosted by Northland Church Senior Pastor, Dr. Joshua Laxton. Join us each week as Pastor Josh reveals the rest of the story behind his sermons. We'll discuss how those who follow Christ can live out a biblical vision for the church in our world today.
Well, hello, Northland family and friends. Hey, welcome to another episode of Extra Takes. I'm your co-host, PJ, along with Matt Shiles. And here we are again, just tracking through Genesis.
You can see us. We're
Wow.
closer.
Well, if you watch it on YouTube, we're just a little bit closer. We wanted you to be able to see our nose hairs.
Really?
I actually shaved mine this past weekend. So if you see any, they really are growing fast.
Why are you going to talk about that?
I don't know, because we zoomed in just a little bit.
And I'm going to be self-conscious.
Yeah, I mean, listen, just own it.
All right.
Just own it. God loves you regardless of how long your nose hair.
That'll preach.
That will.
One day.
One
That'll
day.
be a sermon.
Well, yeah, when they start getting a little out of control.
That's how we know you're running out of material.
Nose hairs. I start going to nose hairs and ear hair.
He's losing it.
Like, what in the world? Talking about his nose hairs. Well, hey, welcome. So glad that you're tuning in for another episode.
We are making our way through Genesis. We're a little punchy today.
Yeah, I'm still foggy from the weekend, which I better get out of the fog because we got Monday night gathering.
Weekend's still happening.
Yeah.
Still here.
It's still here.
Yeah. Well, this will be good because this will remind you what you preached on.
Oh, well, I didn't forget yet.
You going to change anything?
No, I don't think so. Mondays are going to be interesting because who's going to be there? How long have they been here?
Yeah.
And what do I need to like? So that's the part that's going to be interesting.
It's a similar size as Saturday night, but it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
It's a different context, different demographic. I think you already saw that.
Yeah.
After the first couple. And it just feels differently on a weekday than it does a weekend. And it's you're preaching basically up till your bedtime.
Yeah, I usually get in bed. That's no lie. I usually get in bed probably 8:45, 9 o'clock.
I don't know if we mentioned this, but before, have you ever preached that late?
What, like in general?
Yeah,
No.
like that. I was thinking about that. It's probably the latest you've ever preached.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Yeah. I don't remember, because even when...
Breaking records here at
Even when
Northland
we
Church.
would have like evening service would be at 5, 6.
Right.
Yeah, as opposed to 6, 7. It'd be 5 or 6.
My girls love that.
Oh, I'm done. I don't know why I even went there.
I think it's over.
Is it? I don't think so.
It seems like it.
Well, hopefully, for my sanity.
I've said it a couple times in my house in the last week or so, and they haven't said anything. So
Oh, okay. So they're moved on.
I think so. Yeah.
They've moved on.
Well,
okay.
let's have us move on.
Okay.
Focus on what we're talking about
Let's
today.
do it.
We're in Genesis.
Yeah.
Genesis 22, 23. You took us through this super mundane passage. Not boring though.
No, I mean, like, again, I was trying to go after. Yeah, I mean, mundane, is that the right word? Don't know. I think so. It's just
Yeah.
okay. I mean, especially if you're just reading, she died. Okay. You want to buy a field? Okay.
Yeah. You're like, okay, there's some cultural stuff there. That may be interesting for me to look into, but
So
not sure there's much there, but there's a lot there.
there was a lot.
7 points.
Yeah. The fifth one, I basically broke it down into another 2 points, like death. There were elements of death that I had to keep stringing you along.
The tomb, death
Yeah.
is the doorway, and then God's promise.
And then, this not fully yet realized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is in our Genesis series, Making Sense of Mission. We are finding mission in the mundane this week, Genesis 22 and 23. This is April 11th, 12th, and 13th, right? Yeah, today is 13th. So the outline, we started with this idea of footnotes. Big idea, don't skip the footnotes. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
The main point, sometimes Scripture's mundane narratives include major themes in God's missional story. And you said, what may feel like a pause in life is actually a plot in mission. in these 7 missional themes. First, death reminds us why God's mission is necessary. Second, God is at work even when we can't see it. Third, God works in and over cultural practices to advance his missional purposes. Fourth, God's promises are free, but experiencing them is costly. Fifth, the tomb plants a seed for the future triumph and the future throne. Sixth, death is the doorway to experience God's promise. And finally, 7, God's promise is already secured, but not yet fully realized. And then you ended with these missional takeaways. So let's start with one word this week.
One word, providence.
You surprised me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I thought you were going to say something easy like footnote.
Well,
Providence.
yeah. I mean, well, God's providential over the footnote. I mean, yeah. Like, this is just him at work. This is his missional purpose. Like, he's providential over the Hittites. He's providential over what's happening. Because you have to understand, like, Hittites and even Abraham's brother, they're not part of the covenantal promise. And so God is providential. He's working everywhere. And that's the whole idea of the pause, in some sense, Abraham's, like, I mean, because death is a pause. Like, I mean, you're grieving. So, and then you're reading it going, well, okay, she died. Well, like, well, let's move on. Let's get to Isaac. Yeah. And it's like, no, there's some things there that I believe are really important that you actually see elsewhere come to life. Yeah. Even more. So that's why I said providential.
I like it. Have you ever defined providence? How you define terms? I didn't know if you've ever tackled that.
I don't know if I've ever tackled the providence of God, but it's very similar to his sovereignty. Yeah. I mean, I would say they probably, I would have to look at them even deeper, but I would say that they're similar. Yeah. Sovereignty is that he's the sovereign ruler, his sovereign reign, that there's nothing above his sovereignty, that he is, but then providence is him moving.
The way he's working.
So providence, and that's where I'm saying they're very similar. Even though I wouldn't call them synonymous, but one is describing the breath, kind of the breath. Yeah. And then the other one is, the providence is the movement, within that sovereignty.
Yeah, and last week we talked about you can't have mission without movement. So that is another interesting concept to consider, not just how God is calling us to join him and, how we are being called to move, but also how he is active and working all throughout. And you don't just see that through the big stories. You see that in these mundane, seemingly footnotes. But as you taught us, the footnotes are important.
They are important.
So tell us about that, this idea of footnotes. What had you found in your post-grad doctoral studies that caused you to learn? Because, man, you took that to heart and you started using some footnotes.
I sure did. Well, and if I ever write academically, I would definitely use me some footnotes. Yeah. I mean, the dissertation is an academic paper. It's really a book, 250 pages. That is a book. I don't even know how many words. A lot of words. Probably
a lot of words. And the
60,000.
Lengthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so again, going back to college, I'm like, man, that's just extra reading. No, I'm wanting to get done. And that's where you look at the footnotes going, man, that's just extra stuff. That's boring. Yeah. Who wants to read the footnotes? Like, but then what I did come to learn is so these, and actually I like footnotes more than endnotes. You know the difference. So footnotes are in the body
Yeah.
as the book is progressing. Endnotes is at the very end. Sometimes they'll put them at the end of the chapter. And I'm like, nah, I want to know, because I'm actually a fan of footnotes. I want to know if I want to see where you got that, or give me something. And that's actually what footnotes are placed at the bottom of a page in academic, legal, or professional documents that provide citations, references, or additional commentary relating to the main text.
Yeah.
So in the PhD world, they taught you not to be a critic negatively, but you're always going, okay, where'd you get that? If you're saying that's the only way, or you're making a claim, okay, help me understand where you're making that claim. And that's where footnotes are really helpful, because they're telling you where they made that claim or who else said that. And the other element of footnotes is that I actually built reading lists from footnotes.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I want to explore that book. Oh, that's a fascinating footnote about what this author said. I want to actually go. And so when you're in the PhD program and you're writing on something and you're seeing these footnotes, you begin to chase rabbits. And actually, these are good rabbits. Now, some of them, I mean, for the most part, they're good rabbits. Some of them are like, that was a dud. But that's what I love about footnotes. And that's where I'm like, this kind of almost reads more like a footnote. Or you got Abraham's, brother has these sons, and you name a woman.
Yeah.
Okay, what's going on there? And then the whole idea of him buying a field. Okay, what's the big deal? What's the big deal about that? Let's keep on moving. And that's where I'm like, man, no. If you dig into what might seem like a pause, or what might seem like a footnote, or what might seem like boring, you actually find these themes that are significant. They're major.
Yeah. It's almost like the narrator looking right at the camera and giving you, almost kind of causing a pause, a timeout in the story, and give you a little bit more.
Here's the thing. Moses is writing this. I don't think he knows what he's writing.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, he knows what he's writing in terms of, Hebron, but even he doesn't even know what Hebron's going to be, because when he's writing it, they've not even conquered the land yet. So Moses he doesn't know what he's writing. And then he doesn't know that Jesus is going to be buried in a tomb.
Yeah.
He knows none of that. So this is part of where the reason why I get so excited about Scripture and showing this is that the Bible is actually written by one person, and that's God. Now, he's using the conduits of people.
Yeah. But
this is hundreds and thousands of years prior to some of these major themes actually coming to fruition. And even if you think about the secured land or the secured promise but not fully realized, we're still in that. So this is part of where I'm like, man, only in God's sovereignty, only in God's providence, only in God's omnipotence and his omniscience. So omnipotence, all powerful, omniscience, all knowing, is he able to put things like this, in and go where a human being would go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, there's some gold there.
Yeah. That's awesome. Any other big takeaways from this week as you were reflecting, or was that it? Was that the idea of it being a footnote and the importance?
I think that's a big one. And then just the big takeaway is, if you dig, and again, you don't want to dig and try to manufacture something.
You're not trying to force it.
Yeah,
you're just trying not to on purpose skip over things.
But this is part of where if there's no clear connection elsewhere and you're trying to force something there, that's what I mean by you're manipulating or you're manufacturing something, which is one of the reasons why I actually love taking even a little bit more time and showing you the connections of what we're reading here elsewhere. And I could have spent a lot more, kind of a lot more time. But if so, it would be a much longer sermon than 51 minutes.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. And that's why we do extra takes.
Yeah, the footnotes are kind of like the extra takes of a sermon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Footnotes kind of like the extra takes of a sermon.
There you go.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an extra take is like, so here's what this guy said, or this is what this woman said.
Sure.
This is where I got that. So here's an extra take of where I got it. And yeah. So like that footnote that I wrote, it actually explains why I'm writing this dissertation and what everybody else has said and what actually is a gap and a hole that I'm filling.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, really some
which is actually
in-depth
really
stuff.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at this first one. We'll work through a couple of these missional themes. We'll see how many I've got us talking about, maybe 4 of them, and then we want to get to the missional takeaways. So this first one, death reminds us why God's mission is necessary. And you talk to us about the matriarch of mission with Sarah, and you point out something that I had not realized, that there is nowhere else in Scripture where we see an obituary of a woman, and this is really this callback to Genesis 5. It got me thinking about, these seeming obituaries and then also kind of genealogies. So I'd love for us to think about these two types. So we do see some women noted throughout genealogy. So how might we view both of these? This is essentially memorializing people, and when we talk about footnotes, I mean, we can very much view genealogies in this way, where we just see names, what's the point of this, and we just kind of rush through them. So I'd love for us to think about and talk about how these may be similar.
Well, so you do have, like in Genesis 5, you do have a genealogy of Adam's family line.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the genealogy. The obituary is they lived so and so years and then they died.
Yeah.
And that's where you have this kind of almost like distinction, because in Matthew you have a genealogy. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah, Ram the father of, so you just have all of these, names telling you basically here's the lineage.
Yeah.
Whereas in Genesis 5, the obituary is altogether, Adam lived a total of 930 years and then he died. Well, that's exactly what you see in Genesis 23. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died. And so it is this callback, because this is the only time that you see, because you actually see women in Jesus's kind of genealogy.
Yeah. But
this obituary, she lived and then she died. Now, I said something at the 11 o'clock and I'm like, man, I wish I wouldn't have. I mean, I wish I wouldn't have said it, because I'm like, because it would take more time to go back, because I mentioned Enoch, okay, where there was only one person that didn't die, and that was Enoch, because he walked with God. And so, but I'm like, I cannot chase this rabbit after saying it, but because the whole idea, I mean, like even in Adam's line, so are we saying that Adam didn't go to heaven? No, that's not what we're saying. Yeah. But what we're seeing is that every sinner dies, and then God is clearly showing you, like, this is actually what it means to have life and what it means to be saved. You walk with me. And and so that's where then you look at Sarah and Abraham. Well, that's exactly what they did. They were walking with God. I mean, if you're looking at even tracing their steps from Ur of the Chaldeans to Haran to now where they are, what are they doing? They are walking with God. So that's part of where. That's where I'm like, there's this reminder of why we're on mission. So you have the missional family; they are walking with God. So even though she died, doesn't mean that she has ceased to exist or that she is separate from God. No, her and Abraham, they walked with God. And for Abraham, we specifically see God accredited it to him righteousness. So you have this righteous family not because of who they are, but because they had faith.
Yeah.
And again, this is just a callback to Genesis 5 of why God is on mission to redeem, because we're all going to die. We're all going to die. The question is how are we going to die?
Yeah.
Are we going to die in him, or are we going to die separate from him? And so, the way I said it at the 11, I'm like, I wish I wouldn't have brought that cat, out, just because I'm like, not that it would. I think for the most part, people wouldn't be confused. But if somebody's like, well, he didn't die, and she died, does that mean she didn't walk with God? No, she walked with God.
Yeah.
Her and Abraham walked with God.
Yeah. But you couldn't chase that rabbit.
Well, if I chased it, it would throw me off and have been 55 minutes, and and I'm like, no, let's not do it. So
there was no 1 o'clock service.
Yeah, there's no 1 o'clock service, but nevertheless. So that's where I said. I said it better at the 9 o'clock. And this is the thing: when you preach it 3 times and now 4 times on Monday, unless you're just reading a manuscript, there's going to be times where you're like, but then you're like, I said that for somebody, so it wasn't wrong. It just
that happens.
Yeah,
quite a bit, doesn't it? Things come out differently.
Yeah.
You stress. Sometimes convictionally you stress things more. You may be giving points that are a lot more pointed in some services and not others. So yeah, really interesting how that works. So let's look at the second one. God is at work even when we can't see it. You took us down memory lane.
I did. Memory lane.
And you talked about 4 years. Holy cow. Can't believe it's been 4 years.
4 years, man.
You reflected on God bringing you here. So what do we benefit when we stop and reflect on, this big idea of God working on our lives behind the scenes? What do we stand to benefit when we do that?
Yeah, this is where I don't know if I can overstress this, but the whole idea that he's doing something behind the scenes isn't just for you; it's actually for him. And for Abraham, yes, he's working behind the scenes that Abraham cannot see, Isaac cannot see, even Sarah cannot see. We're actually going to see, just how God is at work this coming week when we look at Isaac and Rebekah. But you cannot see, because there's this tension. There's this tension even. So there's this tension that Abraham and Sarah lived with for decades until God actually provided the promise, the promised son. And now there's this tension. Sarah's gone. Mm-hmm. Isaac is, between 37 and 40 at this point, because Sarah has him at 90. She's 127, so he's 30, but he's not going to get married, so he's not. So we don't know how much time, kind of elapses from the time Sarah dies to, when Rebecca comes. But anyways, so that's where I'm saying he's approximately 40, so somewhere between 37 and 40. Yeah. He's single. Yeah. Sucker needs a wife, not for himself, not so that he can be complete. No, so that God's promise, His mission continues to move on. Yeah. So this is where I don't want us to ever forget that what God's doing in us is not ultimately just for us. So when you look at Israel in Egypt, for these decades where they're oppressed. Well, God's doing something behind the scenes in Moses' life. Yeah. Even though Moses doesn't see it. Yeah. And then when you look at Joshua and he's getting ready to lead the Israelites to conquer the promised land. Well, God's doing something with Rahab to help them out in Jericho. And again, they don't know that. They have no idea. Yeah. That this news of this people coming out of Egypt and conquering the Amalekites are winning and never having been trained in war. So God's doing something behind the scenes. So and again, I can go on and on where there's times where you are not going to see what God's doing, where you're actually thinking, God, what are you doing? Like Joseph in the pit, what are you doing? Yeah. In Potiphar's household, in prison, what are you doing? But all along the way, God's got a plan. He has got a plan. Now, in each way, I mean, in each part of the process, you could go, man, what in the world? So I thought you gave me a dream. I thought, and God's like, I did, but it's not yet. It's not going to be fully realized yet. So come with me. And that's one of the reasons why there's a reason why God wanted me here. Don't know. I don't. I mean, it's for His purpose. I know that. I do believe it's for the resurrection and the resurgence and the comeback of Northland. But ultimately it's for His glory and others' good. So that's why I want to tell that story, because I'll never forget that story.
Well, and to the point about it's not about, it's for His missional purposes. In that story particularly, it wasn't just for, you coming here was not just for the benefit of Northland, but there was a lot of other churches, and that's actually one of the things we saw during the pastor search. Just the movement of pastors from one to the next, and just seeing, hey man, this is such a bigger picture than I realize, right? But we don't even see and know the complexities of the plans that God had on the other churches that were involved, not just the ones in your story, but others through this process as well. And we just got to play a little piece of it. But yeah, it's ultimately not for us, but for His purposes. And that actually was the really strong point that came out of that next one, which is God works in and over cultural practices to advance His missional purposes. Yeah. And I really keyed in on that because, man, I so agree with you. We have to remind ourselves over and over again that it's not just about us. Yeah. We're even if we're not egocentric or self-centered or narcissistic, like we are such an individualistic society that it can just become the default often of us thinking about, God, what's your will for my life, and how can I join you on it? But it's for my benefit, etc. But man, for His missional purposes. So I think you may have already answered this question, but what I had for that was, what's the importance of understanding that this is for God's missional purposes? So anything else in terms of that question 3? Or point 3, that God works in and over cultural practices in terms of the missional purposes. Yeah, and I wish I could put up an image that I've used before of the two kingdoms. You have God's kingdom, you have man's kingdom, and then you have this kind of overlap of God's people. You have these two circles.
You have these two, and it's like they're overlapping. A little Venn diagram. Yeah. And that's kind of what you see here is, so on one hand, you have Abraham and Sarah kind of representing, they're the representatives of what God is doing in the world. Okay? Then they're living in a foreign land. That foreign land just so happens to be the land that God has promised to give them. But then what you see is that God is also still sovereign and even providential over the foreign land. And that's where I wanted to, and so instead of giving you that chart, I gave you the chart of how God works in, through, and over culture and cultures to actually advance his mission. Because if you look at Boaz and Ruth, that's actually God's culture. So he's actually, he has set up the culture, and Boaz is actually fulfilling the culture, so he's working in that kind of culture. But then you look at Nehemiah and Esther. Okay, they are more so like Abraham in this particular passage, where Abraham's not a resident. He's not a citizen of the Hittite land, even though God had promised him that land. Well, so same thing with Nehemiah and Esther. Like, they are foreigners and strangers, exiles in foreign territory. Nevertheless, God works through and over cultural practice. So he overcomes cultural norms and cultural practices in order to advance his missional purpose of rebuilding the wall and bringing health and vitality back to his city. He works over the cultural norms of Esther going to the king when she hasn't been invited, and he extends the scepter, and so she comes in, and then the whole situation where over the course of basically 48 hours, God uses Esther to save the Jews. Then you got Joseph and Mary, but then you got the Passover prisoner release. You got Joseph and Mary, once again, kind of Jewish culture that Joseph is actually working in, and he's trying to do what is a custom to a Jewish man who thinks that his betrothed wife is cheating. But then God supersedes that cultural norm and tells Joseph through an angel, "Hey, listen, what's going?" So God, again, he overcomes a cultural norm.
Right.
Then Passover prisoner release. So you got, once again, you got kind of the Jewish people, and you got Rome, and you have God working through, and this is he's working in and actually through, where they're going to release a prisoner. They're just going to. So in all reality, they release the right prisoner from a providential standpoint, because of Isaiah 53 and what God had been working towards from redemptive history. So you got Passover prisoner release, and then Paul appeals to Caesar. So again, he's now working. So Paul is actually using a cultural practice that Roman citizens had at their disposal, that if I feel like I'm being mistreated, or if I feel like I'm not going to get a fair shake, I'm actually going to appeal to Caesar. So he actually works within Roman culture to actually bring about God's missional purpose. So that's where I want it. So that's where I'm like, man, He's at work regardless if it's within the church subcultures or the church within the major culture. God is actually at work in both spheres, and in some sense both domains, to bring about his promise, his purpose in the world.
Yeah, and you gave specific examples of how we're doing it here at Northland, and just the big idea of culture engagement, and that's a term that we use so often. But a good question about culture engagement that I'm getting from this is why, right? For what purposes, and to recognize that these are ultimately for missional purposes, and the way that we engage local government and regional, national government, the way we engage secular thought and other religions is ultimately for his missional purposes, and looking at how God has accomplished those purposes through these examples that you gave in scriptures can give us a good model to recognize what are the big cultural icons and idols of the day that he may be calling us to work in and through.
Well, this goes back to exilic, and exilic is just a fancy word of saying exile, but exilic theology.
Yeah.
And there's a Venn diagram that I created when we were going through that about how you engage. And so you engage as a partner, you engage as a preservative, and you engage as someone who proclaims. So you actually see all three of those at work in these. You got you got this engagement. You're working. You got this engagement of partnering with the culture, but you're actually doing it in a redemptive way.
Right.
Then and so ways that we're partnering is with health insurance, step up funding. We're partnering in that way. So we're taking something that is a good cultural practice, and we're saying, hey, we're going to use that for redemptive purposes. Then you have the preservative element of engagement, where you're preserving life. You're actually acting as a preservative. You're acting as salt. Well, we're doing that through crisis pregnancy centers. We are doing that through Mercy Road, the Creation Mercy Road. And then, the proclamation is, it was really all throughout, but, Easter would be a good example of kind of culture norm where people are going to go to a church. Hey, but listen, we ain't going to make it like we're going to be very, very clear and upfront. Like this is the gospel, as opposed to, patronizing you, making you laugh, or, not, making you feel good. No, we're going to like, hey, this is the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're going to proclaim another king. So you actually have all of those, at play in this.
Were you thinking about those when you created that list, or did that just...
No, no, because this is part of where, and when it's truth, again, it's kind of like, it's going to fit. And so culture, I was like, right. Because I just wrote the three circles on here. So if I ever go back, because one of the things I'm actually thinking about, once I finish Genesis, I think what we will have is an incredible resource for the book of Genesis, of making sense out of life as a major section, making sense of a mission as a major section, and making sense of pain and suffering as a major section, all throughout the book of Genesis.
Yeah.
And so this is where, it could be a huge, huge resource for people.
It could, and yeah, you're right. Having those under each of these sections would be very helpful.
Yeah, because that's what you see again. That's what you go back to Abraham. There's this element where Hittites want to give him the land. No, I don't want the land. I don't want you to give it to me because I know you can take it back.
Yeah,
I want you to sell it to me so that I actually have a legal stake in the land. And God really does. It's almost like a Jedi mind trick, where, because even Abraham says, "Will you intercede? So will you go and beg the God to give me this land?" And this guy does, and there's this deed, and another element of it. So you see it, it was part of the entire passage, but you have that was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. So it just so happens that all of this is taking place at the gate of the city, where all legal transactions take place. So everybody was a witness. You saw the legality of it, and so the security of it that nobody could ever dispute later on. So again, God's working in their cultural practice, even there where it's taking place at the gate of the city, where legal transaction was happening.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't a cultural norm for them to actually sell land to an outsider, foreigner, stranger.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's where I did. I spent a lot of time on the second missional theme, the third missional theme, because I think it's really, really important to kind of, particularly the third one is like, man, this is huge, because this is what's happening today too.
Yeah. Yeah, and something I picked up on the fifth one, you got really excited about this one. You said Abraham has been deeded a portion of the promised land, as we were talking about. How did this come about? It came about through death. Talk a little bit more about that, because that one really leads, the tomb plants a seed for the future triumph and the future throne, and that leads into the sixth one as well, how death is a doorway to experience.
Yeah, you got three elements of really the redemptive, the redemptive perspective of death in God's eyes. So tomb, now so Abraham will be buried in this cave. You will have Isaac, he's going to be buried in this cave. Jacob's going to be buried in this cave. Obviously, Sarah is buried in the cave. Rebecca will be buried in this cave. Guess who else will be buried in this cave? So who did Jacob marry? He had two women he married.
Rachel and
Leah.
blanking Leah. Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah.
Okay.
So only one of them was buried in this cave.
One with weak eyes. Which one's that?
Leah.
Leah.
Now, so Rachel
Okay.
was buried on the road to Bethlehem, the house of bread.
Right.
Okay. Leah's buried. Why's Leah? So this is like, and again, this is where you don't know what you're writing until later. Why's Leah buried there? Who'd she give birth to?
Who did she give birth to?
She gave birth to several,
yeah.
but I'm looking in particular
Judah?
for one, Judah. So she gives birth to Judah. Who comes from Judah?
Lion from the tribe of Judah.
Jesus comes from Judah. So Leah's buried in the cave. So you have all of Abraham's family, and then Joseph wants to be buried in the cave because he's like, bring my bones back.
This is the cave that they keep talking about.
Yes.
I mean, it keeps being mentioned. Go back, go back, go back. This is it.
This is it. So this is where the tomb
Wow.
is the seed. Now, and here's the other thing too. Because I've been reading through the minor prophets, and this is where your brain can hurt. Like a lot of even the talk today around like Iran and Israel and and our involvement, like prophecy is unfolding before our eyes. I'm not the buyer of that. And when you go back, so when I've been reading Joel over the last couple of days, finished Joel today, and you have the day of the Lord, the day of the Lord, the day of the Lord, and there's this promise of restoration, but you have to ask yourself, okay, is it Israel in the Old Testament sense that will in some sense be fully restored? Because again, there's a lot of things that are happening in the Old Testament, just like we're reading in Genesis 23, that if you were in that day, you were reading it, you would read it and go, oh, okay, all right. But you read it in light of Jesus and in light of what the New Testament teaches, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. And this is one of those ideas of the tomb as well and the land. Okay, so the tomb that we as New Testament believers, the tomb that really did plant the seed of triumph and throne is the tomb that Jesus was laid in. Mm-hmm. Well, when he rose from the dead, he not only exposes and demonstrates the triumph of God over death, hell, the grave, sin, Satan, but Jesus ascends, and this is, so after 40 days, he ascends to the right hand of God and he sits down on the throne. But here's what we know that the New Testament teaches. So he's actually going to come. He's going to come again, and he's actually going to bring the throne. He's going to bring when I say heaven, the throne to earth, where he will sit on the throne here on earth as he does in heaven, because there will be a marriage of heaven and earth in the new city, Jerusalem. That's what I truly believe, that much of the prophetic literature in terms of the full-on out restoration, like even Isaiah 61, is pointing to that reality. But that reality doesn't happen apart from the tomb.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting. So we're living within and this is where they all, in some sense, they all build upon one another, because we're living in triumph, even though we don't fully experience triumph yet. This is why you're struggling. This is why I struggle. It's because it's not fully realized yet. And that's a big one. Yet.
It is a big one. Yeah.
So that's what's going on, with the whole tomb, triumph, and throne. And I think most people didn't realize that David established the throne. He established the kingdom in Hebron at the very beginning, and then after 7 years moved it to Jerusalem as the city of peace.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well said. So if that's it for the 7 missional themes, I want to take us to these missional takeaways.
Okay.
Let's read through these and see which we want to touch on. First, don't rush past the pauses in life or scripture. Second, trust God is working even when you cannot see it. Third, the promise is free, but the cost is great. Fourth, death isn't defeat, but the ultimate doorway to experience victory. That's both spiritual and eternal. And then live here in present as if you're living there in the future. So one that I wanted to touch on was that first one, don't rush past the pauses in life or scripture. What might some pauses in our life look like?
I think loss. I mean, let's just read what we're reading right here in this passage. Loss. Mm-hmm. Like Abraham's grieving over the loss of his wife. I mean, 120. She was 127 years old. Don't know when they got married, but I mean, he's had a very full, long life with her. And again, she's the matriarch, and now she's gone.
Yeah.
So this feels like a pause. What are you doing? And even in that pause and buying the land, I mean, God's doing something tremendous. And I don't even know if Abraham's fully aware. I mean, I think Abraham is aware that, hey, now he's got stake and he's got a deed to at least a portion of this promised land, but he will never see the full reality. And here's the other idea too. Israel doesn't even see the full reality of the promised land becoming theirs, because they do not completely sweep away, eradicate all of the inhabitants of the land. A large portion of the inhabitants, the citizens of the land, actually stay in the land, which is part of Israel's struggle, and part not only of their struggle but their demise is that they are led astray by the inhabitants of the land and their idolatry. But again, so this is part of where we're still waiting on that full reality. And that full reality doesn't happen until Jesus comes back. But a pause could be grief. It could be a loss. Maybe again, this goes back to a breakthrough element, is that you feel like you're on a merry-go-round. And it could be in a marriage where you're like, man, we're just like, I don't feel like there's any movement taking place. Maybe it's in a career where a midlife crisis where you're like, man, I've just been doing the same old for 15 years. Like, what are you doing? Where am I going? Like, what's going on? You feel stuck. It's like a pause. Maybe you feel a little hopeless. Because Abraham, you're going to read, we'll read next week where Abraham does not want to get a wife for Isaac from the inhabitants of the land. He wants to go back to his, so he's having to pause. Like, I wonder what's going to happen to my boy. How's all this going to unfold?
Yeah.
So those are pauses that can happen. Waiting on a pastor could be a pause. Waiting on great momentum. Like, I'll just be like, I'm just telling, like, I'm waiting on, like, I know God's doing stuff. Like, I can see, and this is the thing, I can see incremental stuff. But I'm like, man, God, like, I'm begging, I'm pleading to see greater things. And again, not that I feel like we're in an actual pause, but there are sometimes I feel like it's going in slow motion. So when life feels like it's in slow motion, it could almost feel like a pause. You're like, and so
yeah, we've all watched those movies that they just drag out, and you're like, just get to the action, just get to the important parts, right? And you're encouraging us not to rush past that.
No,
you're encouraging us to, like, just, if you find yourself in those, just really try to find, because God's moving behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And he's not just moving necessarily for our benefit.
Yeah.
For his missional purposes, which I actually think can give us great hope during pauses, because I think during pauses in life we can just start to question the real big questions in life. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Is anything I'm doing, does it matter?
Yeah.
Whether that's in life or our marriage or career or, with our parenting, whatever it is, right? But if we have this perspective, that our faithfulness, we continue to be faithful, and then God is moving behind the scenes. I think that can be really, really encouraging to us.
Yeah, I mean the element of Jesus' resurrection. So he died on Friday, was buried, and there's this. Could you imagine how long basically Saturday was, and even Sunday? I mean, because they still didn't believe. I mean, it feels like what's now happening? What's going on in my life? We've had this huge loss. We thought it was going to turn out differently. It didn't. We go through those all of the time, and that's part of where you're like, all right, God, you're doing something. People know I've talked about the City of Refuge in 2014. I mean, that's a huge pause in my life, huge pause.
Right.
But God was actually doing something in that pause. He was doing something in that pause in me for the betterment of the calling that He had placed on my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think probably in every transition in our life, there could be potential pauses as well. I wrote down a couple. Obviously, loss is one, but graduate college, and all right, what's my career going to look like? What's my job going to look like? You're trying to get that first job or trying to get that first career job, and there's just this pause.
Yeah.
Retirement. All right, there's this period of 6 months to a year where, I know a lot of retirees are busier than they were before, but man, there's this pause. There's this transition where you're like, what am I going to fill my time with? I love that idea of us not rushing past those pauses in life and trying to just really recognize, hey, how's God moving and working and changing? I mean, the pauses in our life have a profound opportunity for us to be transformed.
Yeah.
All right. Any other missional takeaways that you want to touch on?
No, I feel like we've touched on them, kind of in the body. I just wanted to summarize basically these 5 major, kind of like takeaways that are embedded within the 7 missional themes. So in some sense, I just wanted a good little summary, kind of recap. Even though I hit on these throughout, I wanted to put them in one slide to kind of put a nice little bow on it. I think a big one, and we didn't talk about it, but the promise is free, but to experience it's going to cost you enormously. I don't know, and this is where I wanted to stress that, because in God's economy, He does require payment. It's just that payment that you give Him, it actually is the cost for you to experience the promise, but you can't buy the promise.
Yeah. Right.
You can't afford the promise.
But it costs you something.
Yeah, but it costs you everything.
But you can't buy it. Yeah,
well, and this is where, so you have to understand too, where did Abraham get the wealth? Who gave him that wealth? God gave him that wealth. So his ability to even pay for a portion of the land came from what God had given him already. So, and this is the idea of also faith. Who gives? This is what Ephesians teaches. That grace is a gift that God, that obviously grace is a gift, but faith is also that gift that God has given you to believe in Him. So you have God. He is the originator of all of the blessing. But this is where I want to stress that, because we're this kind of church. We're not the church where we say that you have to work for your salvation or that you can earn your salvation. I cannot do anything in and of myself, even for the rest of my life or even for all of eternity, that would be able to afford my salvation. Because if I can do it, if I had the capacity and the ability to earn salvation, I'm actually earning it for myself. And that's the whole reason why we need salvation, is because Adam and Eve made it all about them rather than all about God. Okay, so salvation isn't something that I can earn, but salvation is extremely costly. So what it cost was Jesus' life, and what it's going to cost us to experience what Jesus purchased for us is our life. So there is a reciprocation, but the reciprocation is because you did something that I could not do, which is gracious and merciful and extremely loving. I'm going to do something too that is costly, because the whole reason why the human race is in a state of brokenness and decay and chaos is because they unraveled supreme love for the King. So now, again, this is, so if the Supreme King actually gave what we could not give to purchase what we could not purchase, again, his life, then it only stands to reason, the reason why he did that was so that we would be reconciled, made right with God. And the only way to be made right with God is to actually have the right perspective and posture and an outlook on him. And what is that posture? What is that perspective? That he's the King. So that means my life, I give my life to the King, because in a kingdom, everything revolves around the King.
Yeah.
So that's where, like, his life doesn't revolve around our life. No, our life revolves around his life. So, but if that's going to happen, it's going to cost us everything. It's going to cost us our relationships. Now, all of our relationships revolve around him. It's going to cost us our vocation, but because now our vocation, our career, our job revolves around him, what he wants to do. And then it revolves around our time, our talents, and our treasures. So the gifts and the skills and abilities that he has given us, the resources, the money that he's given us, now all of that belongs to him. Now we are reorienting it around him. It costs us everything. We actually own nothing, because in the kingdom, the king owns everything. He's just a benevolent king that allows us to steward his land, his resources, everything that he's given us. He just allows us to steward them in a way that brings him glory for our good and others' good. Like, that's what it costs you.
Amen. I think you're ready to preach again tonight.
Think I ought to add that one?
Let's do it.
Well, Northland family and friends, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Extra Takes. Until next time, blessings.
Thanks for listening to Extra Takes. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you won't miss a single episode.